Mando. Madness. I said, young man, I got me up. I want to live beat live, but I swear, not easy. My been rapping, my old man, I get it. My girl was doing, I'm breaking the profit. On my way, people calling me names. All the trouble I see, I do at a piece. When the suffering, the sources, I copy the code, how I get paid. Sooner or later, my hustle pay. Let pay, and I'm rushing myself. Keep it cool, everything have a CC. Too much rushing, I probably chasing. One day. One day. Let's go. One day.
I know my hustle gonna pay one day. Any mess they're gonna see my face. Me I know I'm not watching it. One day, success gonna come my way. I know my hustle gonna pay one day. Any mess they're gonna see my face. Me I know I'm not watching it. One day, success gonna come my way. Yeah. My mama was so worried. My papa was so worried. My friend was eating money. Any mess that will come on that miss. So I on my way. 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 I'm on my way to this place and I'm looking for money. Looking for money, oh. Looking for money. I want make my man happy. Want make Papa happy. Want make all my brothers and sisters to come around me.
Yeah. Happy the cool. Why you know you hustle? Why you saying the go by the Genesis? Shall come let the fire, shall come let the power. I feel never be working on Wednesday. You must look for the mile, you must look for the mile. All in the dark, all in the week, all in the sun.
My mama was so worried.
No for air.
My papa was so worried. My friend was eating money. Any mess that will come on that miss. So I on my way. 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 I'm going to this place and I'm looking for money. Looking for money.
Amando, you are a famous star now. So what do you have to say to the audience out there?
Well, to the audience out there, I want to say keep focused.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men and women. Welcome to Tony Commander, J.R. Glapohkpa Chesson talk show. I've been on and off for a few days this week because people have been trying to hack my computer, trying to keep me off the air. You know, even right now, you saw my show started. I had difficulty coming on because my cursor was all over the place. You're trying to stop my show, man. Don't mind the numbers you see people watching my show, and they want to stop it because they know what I'm saying is right and the truth and wisdom and direction for my people. If my people will pay attention and listen to wisdom. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I'm not trying to be egotistic or self-centered or prove anything. I speak only the truth. I spent my years in school learning, spent my years in practical training, military, different things I've done in my life because it's a challenge. Life is a challenge. Life is not easy. It is a challenge. And if you're not equipped to meet the challenge, you will fail in your personal life as well as in your public life. You will fail. So my topic for this morning is Liberia's Patriots. Arise and be conscious of the collective struggle of the Liberian people. Our 1980 People's Revolution cannot die. That's my topic for this morning. Because I must bring to the consciousness of my people that we had a revolution for our people to change our country. And many people died since then to this very day. And we have lost our minds and our ideals, our thoughts of who we are as a people. What our dreams of our fathers were from 1980 that led us through wars to this very day. We have a mission and we cannot forsake that mission. So let me take a coffee break. Let me start my show officially and we'll get into my topic, why our 1980 People's Revolution cannot die. Aluta continua. My roots in Liberian society go very deep, as it does in American society as well. It's just that my roots in this society are not as known as my roots in Liberia, nor are they as visible as my roots in Liberia. My roots in Liberia go deep because I am both indigenous and Congo. The real people that know me know my roots. And someone then say I'm a countryman. During trouble time, all of that. They say, oh man, California, you countryman, because they knew my roots. My grandmother was the daughter of the Gola chief at that time, when my grandfather married her. It was his choice to marry an indigenous woman to seal his pact and friendship with his indigenous people, like Chief Tamba, Boto Barkley. What the Tamba name man from Nova County? What Tamba name man? Chief Tamba name of the big chief of the Boto Barkley. And all these people that he brought into our legislature because he was Speaker of the House. And he understood the law that taxation without representation is illegal. When you tax people in a democracy, they must be represented and have a voice in how their lives are being regulated. That's one of the basic tenets of democracy when it comes to taxation. People must have to see, I can't give you my money. Every year you want tax from me, you want tax from me. Then you don't want me to say anything. I can't have no vote, no voice in the Senate. And my grandfather knew that our indigenous people had no understanding about voting. So who could best represent them than the chiefs? But that brought about his own demise. Because while my grandfather was thinking about uplifting our indigenous people and bringing them to Monrovia and teaching them about government and democracy, a group of his colleagues were looking at his efforts with a negative intention. Oh yes, let him bring the chief, let him bring the native people in town, we'll get rid of him, and all of them will be loyal to Tubman, and Tubman will rule indefinitely. And that's just what happened. Because my grandfather thought he was doing good. And Tubman kept asking my grandfather, do you think, are you a real man? Why would he ask my grandfather that kind of question? And how I know this because my grandmother told me. My grandmother never talked to me about my grandfather because what happened to her in her era really disturbed her mentally. Because the people tried to drive her crazy. Because when my grandfather married her and took her up to his settlement in Carisburg, the people knew she was not part of them. So all of them treated her so bad. They disrespected her. They took things from her that weren't theirs. They tried to take her husband. They made all kind of comments about her. They practically drove my grandmother mad to get her under them. My grandfather had to move her from there and take her to Monrovia to stay by herself, and he lived in Carisburg. And that was my grandfather died because they made him separate himself from my grandmother. So my grandmother was in Monrovia, and everybody thought she was crazy because they wanted her to be crazy. Because they drove the woman mad. They did things to her that drove her mad. If you alone in a settlement and everybody else against you trying to get rid of you because you got that prize man, my grandfather was the prize man of the Carisburg people. All the women wanted him. He was wealthy, educated. Then he go marry an indigenous woman. Do you think our Liberian women like that? Our Congo women like that? No. They drove my grandmother. They couldn't even do my grandfather. So they drove my grandmother mad, trying to make him get rid of her, which he did. Because they couldn't live together after she got so disturbed. And she couldn't live in Carisburg. So she had to go live in Monrovia. You see? And my grandmother never talked about my grandfather's political life to me. But after I started growing up and I told you who followed me, that there was a man who called me and told me, he asked me, he said, who you think killed your grandfather? He said, you know how your grandfather died? I said, yeah, that he was poisoned. He said, who you think poisoned your grandfather? I said, the people in my family and all around looking at Torba with suspicion. Because Torba wanted to be vice president so bad, he was able for the job. Then the man said, you think, man, why would Torba want to kill your grandfather? Torba didn't have the rich to kill your grandfather. Who do you think had the rich to kill your grandfather? He said, you are educated man, go home and look at your grandfather's life over, and you'll find out who killed your grandfather. And when he said it to me, that was the first time somebody had ever told me that Torba didn't kill my grandfather. Because everybody was pointing to Torba. The kids where people were for the Bento people, Torba people. So when this man told me that, I started putting one to one together. Then I come to my grandmother one day, out of the blue. I'm already confused about what this man told me, trying to put one and one together as a lawyer and as because I looked at the cases, there were no real case to it. They didn't do no real investigation into my grandfather's death. They just say he died mysteriously. That's what the book said. How the a vice presidential nominee just died mysteriously from poison? What was that? So that what the history book say, he just died mysteriously. And nobody ever talk about my grandfather. Anytime I go to talk about my grandfather, anybody, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. So when this man told me this thing, he said, "Who you think will kill your pa?" And everybody just shut up. That was one of the things he really said to me. Then I didn't really think that Totman would have done that thing. But I was still thinking, who would have done this? Then I went to my grandmother one day. My grandmother never talked to me about my grandfather all my life. I've been around my grandmother all my life. She never said anything about my grandfather. This day I walk into my grandmother's house to visit her. As soon as I walk in and tell her, she tells me, she said, "You know something? Your grandfather always used to be worried because every time he went to Totman would always ask him, 'Are you a real man?'" She said every time. Out of the blue, my grandmother just started talking that thing. Because we're just talking about something else, and there was a big break in our conversation, like a brief silence. Then she just started talking. She said, "You know, your grandfather always would come home, and he was always worried because he wanted to know why Totman always were asking, 'Are you a real man? You sure you're a real man?'" I said, when she said that, I jerked. I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Your grandfather always used to worry that one of the things that worried your grandfather, he used to come home and say to me, 'Why Totman always asking me, am I a real man?'" "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Oh, Totman killed my grandfather." Right there I knew he poisoned my grandfather. Because anybody who asks you, are you sure you're a real man, that means you sure you got juju. You sure you're strong in voodoo. And maybe my grandfather knew that, but he was just pretending ignorance. And who killed him? Till today we don't know. But there were many mysteries around his death. The woman who fed him the food, who used to cook for him, she saw that if she wasn't ever involved in it, when she died, her hand was swelled up in the air. And according to my aunt, when she died in the street, she fell out in the street and died, and her hand just swelled up in the air like that. Instead of that, they had to break it down to put it in the casket. They couldn't bring her hand down. It just went up and just stayed up like that. That's how she said. So they broke it down and put her in the casket. And nobody ever talked about my grandfather. Till today. I'm the only one talking about my grandfather. And sure, people scared. Because anybody who tried to talk about my grandfather was threatened with death. Because they knew Totman did that. So nobody would dare to talk about my grandfather's death or even mention anything about it. And that's not right. And this is what we're suffering today. Because Totman did some mess in our country with impunity. He killed people. He killed the Coleman brothers, the Coleman and his son. They were against Totman staying in power for life. Totman wanted to change the constitution. The constitution of Liberia, just like it was now before Totman. Every president served 2 terms, and that was it. When Totman got there, before Totman got there, Barclay wanted to change the constitution to stay longer. So they thought Totman was a dummy. So they said, well, let's use Totman, let him come and be president for a while. Let Barclay sit down and write the constitution as he wants it to be. And when he finished writing it, we kick Totman out and bring Barclay back in. But they didn't know Totman was smarter than him because they thought Totman was just a little drunk and drunk from Maryland County who wanted to mix up with the people in Monrovia, and and he wasn't ready into the crowd, but he wanted to be, and all of that. So they said, oh, and Barclay was looking for somebody safe to put into the presidency that it would kick out any time. So they didn't know who to find. So somebody said, well, let's bring Tutman. He was a late senator from Maryland County. He was a drunk, all in the street. Every party you go to Tutman would be drunks rolling all on the street. All the grown-up boys know him because they had to go pick him up from the street and take him home sometimes. Tutman was a drunk. So they said, oh, let's bring Tutman, let them bring Tutman, let's bring Tutman in there. So they brought Tutman. But they didn't know that drunk was a smart dude. So they brought Tutman there. When Tutman got there, I think Tutman lays Barkley and locked him up for one charge. He couldn't come back to the presidency. Tutman took all his boys, took all Barkley boys, and put them under the government and put his own boys in, like Mac Nishi and all the other boys, put them in a key position. And these were strong boys. And they consolidated themselves. Barkley couldn't come back. The thing Barkley wanted to do with the Constitution, change it. It happened under Tutman. What it did, they modified the Constitution. Instead of the president staying for only 2 terms, they said the president can stay as long as the people elect him. So if the people elect you forever, you stay forever. And that's what happened to Tutman. So when they changed the Constitution, nobody could talk because Ben Fremont had already brought all the indigenous chiefs from the country, put them in the House of Representatives, and told them that Tutman was their benefactor. My grandfather was loyal to Tutman. But I don't think he wanted Tutman to stay for life. So when Tutman then knew they had to get rid of him too because he was a guy of the law. He was a guy that liked to follow the law just like me. He was a guy that liked to follow the law. And that was me and plenty of people can agree. Because some of the shit they want to do, I can't do it. Because it's against the law. It's against the national law. It's against our community law. It's against our community organization constitution. And when against the law, against the law. And that was me and people fuss. People want to do things that we've done from time immemorial. I'm telling them we can't do it. We got to follow the law. We got to follow the Constitution. Even when I work in the ACI at the prison, all the officers, many of the officers, not all, many used to get mad at me because I was too strict. You know, for my first 5 years in the prison, I was strict. I didn't drop nothing. You mess up, I'll root you up in a heartbeat. But experience and time and seeing the situation you're under, you understand when you have to change, when you have to lessen your strictness, when you have to be more flexible with the situation. That's experience. The more experience I got, the more I knew how to deal with the people. We're all writing them up or locking them up. The more they respected me too because they knew I was a man that wasn't going to change. I stuck by my guns. If you didn't do what I tell you and it was wrong, you're going to lock up. I don't care what it is, but I was more flexible, will give you more time to consider your action rather than just come in and say you do it or you go inside. I would say, look, man, look, you don't want to go inside, man. Let's talk. Let's think. Go do what you got to do. I will more lengthy with my patience, in dealing with that kind of shenanigans. Because most of it is shenanigans. People trying to get over. And you got to deal with that. So as a rookie, that's why it's harder to deal with rookies because rookies who are dedicated to their jobs like I was or am still, when we come out of the training, we come with the book in our head and trying to ensure that what we learn is done practically. That people who are really loyal to their jobs. Then as we work with the people that we're dealing with, over the time we get experience. And with experience, we know how to deal with them better. That's why we call them rookies. Because they are rookies. They're wet behind the ears. They don't know anything they have to learn. They're not experienced enough. So the more they hang out and with all other officers and learn experience, see how the other officers handle the situation, they get experience too. So when they're on their own, they can reflect on what they learn from that officer and the other officers that deal with them. Because every officer you deal with got different styles. So you got to choose your style from the different officers you deal with, you learn from. Choose or put all the different styles together and make your own style. And that's what I did. All the officers I learned from, I put the thing together from all of them and developed my own style. And that what made my style unique. And all the years, I had to change with experience. And people know me because as the inmates get to know you too, they know who you are. They know how professional you are. They know whether you're a douchebag. They know whether you're professional. They know everything about you. So when you're dealing with them, from their respect for you, you understand where you're standing. And I'm just saying all of this to bring it front and focus into the topic I'm dealing with today, our 1980 revolution. Liberian people must understand, in 1980, there were a lot of things going on in our country that needed to be changed. We came from Tottenham with this one family rule, the Congo people ruling. Many of us didn't fall into that clique. Many of us were young. We saw our country as we got educated and more experience, just like I see in a prison, that transferred to life. We grew up thinking one thing on a Tottenham, but as we grew older and became educated and began to learn, and our country changed from Tottenham to Toba on a new era, where we were more into manhood and into saying things in our country and having a say in where our country goes. Our mentality began to change. Our ideals begin to change. I have always been a one person to stand up for what I believe in. As all the people around me, I'm not a clique man. I don't go into cliques. No, I'm educated. I've always known what I want. Even when I went to school, I didn't question anything. I went straight into political science because I knew I wanted to learn political science. When I left there, I went straight into law. I didn't have to question about what I wanted to do in life. I knew what I wanted to do in life. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. But as I got into life, I knew that I didn't want to sit down and be going to court every day. I knew that I didn't want to be behind the desk every day. That wasn't my forte. You see? But I didn't know much about the military. In Liberia, now that I came to America, then I knew you could be lawyer and join the military. You could be doctor and join the military. You could be anything in the military. They got anything in the military. And that even broadened my horizon. Because we're in the military, that's discipline. Serious discipline. Direction. Focus. Training. Consistent training. And those are the things that, other than formal education, develop manhood, protects the nation, give us people who have principles. They may not go to school and all of that, but they learn principles through discipline and hard work and sincerity and patriotism and loyalty. So when our coup happened in 1980, those of us that saw the need for change in Liberia. Because when Toba was there, yes, our country was progressing, but it wasn't growing. You understand what I mean? We have people were getting paid, everything was flowing in the country. People, the party were there, the country was, we're developing, but there was something missing in our country. There was that link of unity and fairness and direction and linking our two societies together, our indigenous society and our Congo society. We weren't doing that. Talbot represented a change in our country. He was the best leader we had or had known because our country is young. Really, we only had two leaders. If you look at Liberia country, we had 3 or 4 leaders. We had and George Rawa, E.J. Roy, and Hillary Richard Ray Johnson. Then you have Tutman. Then you have Talbot. Really, those are the leaders we have. Barkley, then they do it there, but they still didn't impact our country as these people are talking about. So when Tutman got there, he stayed the longest, and he impacted our country the most. We are all offsprings of Tutman. That's why our country is so corrupt. That's why our country is so backwards. Because what Tutman did threw our country back years. Yes, it looked like development to us. Yes, Tutman built things in our country. Yes, he expanded our country, but he didn't expand the minds of our people. He didn't expand the minds of our people. The masses of our people's minds remain stagnant. Even the Congo people, most of the Congo people didn't get the education that we needed to change our country. It was just a few Congo people among the elite that saw these things, that traveled and came back. They would have been pintos and they enjoyed. But the masses of us did not get that training that we needed to go out and seek to unify our country. My grandfather started it when it started with the unification and integration process. That was something that came out of my grandfather too when he brought all the indigenous people to our city to be representatives, to represent the people because you can't tax them with all representation. And my grandfather, as a lawyer, knew that. And they were scared of my grandfather because my grandfather demanded that our chiefs come to Liberia to serve in the legislature because we cannot continue to tax the chiefs and the people of our indigenous society with all representation. But we were young at that time, all of us used to laugh. Oh, they bring all these chiefs and giving them cars, they can't read. But my grandfather who did that. And they killed him because of that. And because of that, Tutman served 30 years as president because my grandfather was loyal to Tutman. When he brought all the chiefs, he told them that Tutman was the innovator of all these things. So when they poisoned my grandfather, he was out of the way, and they put the blame on on Talbot, because our people blamed Talbot, because Talbot was greedy for position. So when they poisoned my grandfather, they knew the blame was going to fall on Talbot, because Talbot was anxious for a job. So they took Talbot and made him vice president right away. So that created that link between the animosity between my people and the Bento people and Talbot people and all of that. But the real people who did that were sitting down looking at them laughing. That was Tutman, because after they did that, Tutman then could use the loyalty that came from my grandfather, that he told the people that he was a representative of Tutman. And Tutman was the leader of all this. So when they moved my grandfather, the loyalty of the indigenous people went to Tutman. So when Tutman stepped in the role to lead, everybody else was scared of Tutman. Who Congo people would venture against Tutman when he got all the indigenous chiefs under his command? That had Tutman reign Liberia for 30 years. Because the real people that revolted against him, that didn't give a damn, that the Coleman and his son, he sent the military to get rid of them. And all his boys got rid of them. They killed Coleman. Because Coleman didn't agree to Tutman staying in power forever. Because when Tutman then changed the constitution from 2-year or 4-year terms limit to you can just stay in power as long as the people vote for you. Coleman then knew that Tutman had a plan to stay in power forever. Because if the indigenous people could vote now, and all of them were loyal to Tutman, and all they knew was Tutman, and they didn't trust anybody else, Tutman was going to stay in power for life, and he did. So that Tutman was successful in staying 30 years in power because our indigenous people gave their loyalty to him. So that's where the one social all came from. Okay? Because when they brought all the indigenous people and their loyalty was to Tutman, he was the one. So say one, so say all. Anything Tottenham say, we agree with it because that's the man we know. That's the man better from a gate or two. Because we're better from abroad. And what do we, when I Tama man in Chief Tama Taylor, when he brought Tama Taylor, he brought Boto Bagley, he brought all the big chiefs and gave them to Tottenham. See, this the man that I'm working for. This is the man that started all of this. This is the man that we all of us should honor. When he died, everybody turned to Tottenham. So this is how our country ended up as it is today. Because any democracy where the leader stays more than a certain number of years, that democracy declines. That's why we put term limits to democracy, because in our system democracy, we all got to have renewal of ideals. One person can't stay in power forever. Two years term is enough. Then you bring fresh brains in to keep the system going. Then you bring fresh brains in, because we're not a monolithic society where one person just stay in power forever. No, we're a homogeneous society. We mix. People can come and go. People come and go. People come and go. That's how democracy works. That's why all democracies depend on the integrities of the people and the leadership, especially the leadership. If the leadership don't have integrity, the people will not have integrity. You see, look where we are today in America with the January 6th committee. Look at all of the things that are coming out of that committee. Because somewhere along the line, we had leaders that lost integrity. And when they lost integrity, they brought our government down to shame and disgrace and almost destroyed our democracy. It was God that blessed us. Because look at what happened in this country. If these people had overturned this democracy, many of us are going to die. People that knew who were talking against the evils of the past regime, they were killing me. You know how many times they suspended me from Twitter, Facebook all the time for talking, for writing against these people? Then why kill me too? So many of us will have died. People are going to die. And these people weren't going to care. We know it. We see it. We hear it now. It's coming out now. But that's the foundation of democracy. Our integrity, our sense of direction and leadership to maintain this system. Because there's no force for the people coming together. We're not forcing people. We're not using the military. It's free will. It's we, the people, conscious of our need to come together as a group, to live collectively, to select leaders collectively and peacefully through voting processes. That's the process that enables us to do things fairly and collectively, through our collective efforts. So if we had this kind of democracy and it failed, it would be failed because the leaders failed. So to go back to my subject now, after all that happened in our country before 1980, many of us wanted change in Liberia, in spite of the fact that Talbot was the most educated leader. He brought some sense of renaissance to our country. He had us on a different plane. There were still cliques of people who believed that they owned Liberia, just like today. There were cliques of people who felt that they were entitled to Liberia more than other Liberians, just like today. And that caused many of us to want change in Liberia. We saw Steve Talbot when Talbot started to change. Talbot got that many good first. Then he started to change. Just like Ellen Johnson said it. He started to change. He put his brother in power. The other brother was in the Senate. Then he brought his son AB and put AB somewhere else again. I mean, Eric Well being Talbot's now. Then Steve Talbot come up and make the statement that if Liberia is not for the Liberian people, it will be for the Talbot family. Then Talbot on that, you make that kind of statement, then you go around forcing people to sell their property to the Talbot family. That's what the Minister of Finance was doing. Then he went and brought Gambling in the country for the Turbo family. Then they wanted to change all laws to permit gambling. And that's where he failed because the churches kicked up against it. And once the church kicked up against it, it failed. And according to what we know, mobsters' hands were in this deal that Steve Turbo was making to bring casino gambling into Liberia. And Turbo agreed to it. And when the churches kicked against it, the mob wanted their money back. All the money they gave to Steve Turbo, he couldn't produce it. So his plane mysteriously crashed. And everybody in the plane died. So we know that was the rumor about Steve Turbo and the gambling business. So the gambling business was out of Liberia. So all of these things culminated into the 1980 revolution. Liberian people were tired. If Turbo had not come with a breath of fresh air to Liberia, with a sense of change, because when Turbo came, he started the speedy thing, going to office, firing people for not coming soon, doing things that were good for the country. People were rejoicing. Then he started putting his family in government. That started a big fuss. Because when he started to do that, they started to behave in ways that were not professional, that were not respectful to other Liberian people, that were not lawful. And he had no knowledge of it, or he could not control his relatives. So everything went amok. That's why they say you can't put your relatives in government. You can't put your children in government. Because your children will do something and you try to chastise them, they will not care about you. And they will try to mess your government up. And that's what happened to Turbo. So Turbo government turned right around. And the Liberian people, Samuel Tanyando led the military coup. But it wasn't him who planned it. Mayor Jebo planned it. It was not him who incited it. Foreigners incited it. So all of this came back to haunt us. To haunt us. Because it's despite the fact that foreigners were involved in a coup, or Samuel Doe didn't plan it, it was Jebo that planned it. Jebo, I knew Jebo personally. I heard Jebo say from his mouth that they wanted to overthrow the Congo people and kill them. I heard it. And I told Jebo I couldn't sit with him no more after he made that comment. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, you my Peking man." He hugged me. Me and Jebo, he was captain then. He hugged me. He said, "Oh, Chesson, you my Peking man, you know, you my Peking." I said, "Yeah, but you talking about killing people and overthrowing our government." I said, "I can't be with that because I told him before he was captain. I told him I heard my pa sitting with Bertie Holder, who was Minister of Defense. And my pa asked Bertie Holder, what you going to do about Jebo? Jebo was captain then. Then Bertie Holder said to him, "Oh, we got plans for Jebo." I left that meeting and ran downstairs to Jebo. He was in the car, in the van, the security van. I ran to him. I said, "My man, you gone." He said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "I go into court now. I come back, you'll be mayor." He said, "You joking?" I said, "I'm telling you." He said, "Okay, when you come back, then we'll eat the farina." He had a phrase, something like that. Jebo always used to say something like that. He always, every time he talks something, when he want to tell you we'll be together, he said we'll eat the farina together or something like that. Jebo had a statement, even when they killed him, the soldier who killed him said that when he stopped Jebo said, "Oh man, we'll eat the farina together, man." The man said in the newspaper, as soon as he said that, I said, "Take it out, Jebo." Once he said that comment statement, I knew that was Jebo because that was Jebo's statement. He would always say that thing when it comes to us doing things together. He said, "Oh, we'll eat farina together, man." So when he said it to me, I said, "Okay, we'll eat farina together." I left. When I came back, Jebo was mayor. So I knew Jebo wanted to overthrow the government. I wasn't going to report him. I was mature. I wasn't going to be stupid. But I told my father they were going to overthrow them because I knew talk about leadership and security were weak. I knew it. Those boys were womanizers and they were educated. They were not hardcore people. I knew Jebo was the first time I saw Jebo, I knew Jebo was a real trained soldier. That's why I fell in love with him. I had never seen a man like that in my life, a Liberian man like that. Demanding command, trained. They never trained. That's why I followed Jebo everywhere. And he one of the people that inspired me. You know, the way he dressed, the way he was a soldier, man. And I really respected him for who he was. It wasn't about education. It wasn't about status. It was about who he was. He was a soldier. He was a man that demanded respect if you knew Jebo. And that's why I love Jebo. Like my own father, I used to follow Jebo everywhere. That's why I heard him when he talked about cool, because I always would be under him. And he accepted I used to have me with him. He didn't even think twice to say he would watch over the government and kill all the Congo bitches. And I said, oh, Jebo, you can't do that, man. They said, oh, Chesson, you my picking, man, you my picking. And I said, man, I can't sit to you. You talking the kind of thing, I can't sit there no more. And that's how I stopped following Jebo. But after our 1980 coup, we all were bitter. All lost people. But I knew as a political scientist, I knew as a patriotic Liberian that our country had to change. I knew our country had to change. I prayed for that change because our country was being ruled by families. And that's not what our democracy was all about. We have come out of Tottenham with this elitism, inciting people, and it wasn't right for my country. And I knew it. Yes, I live in that area, but I wasn't of that area. I live with our raised by my aunt, Louise Wassel Smith. I grew up in the market all my life. I live with the market people. I grew up in the YMCA. I grew up on the street in Broad Street. I didn't belong with the elites. Yes, I was born in that setting. I grew up in it. I learned everything they had. I learned the etiquette. I learned the knowledge, everything. But I didn't belong. I didn't fit in there. Because the rest of my people that I knew and cared about could not fit in that setting. So we needed changes in Liberia. And I knew we needed change in Liberia. Because many of the people I love did not fit in the setting that I was privileged to be in. And I was a man of the people. The people that I knew all my life can't sit in the setting. I don't belong in the setting. That's why you see today I'm not serving Liberian government. I didn't get rich with Ellen Johnson telling them, no, I don't belong in that setting. I belong with the people. I know who I am. You got to tell me who I am. I got to steal to be like Ellen Johnson telling them. I won't be like them. I won't be the top of children, wealthy, all that. No, I don't have to be like that. I'm a man of the struggle. I was born in the trenches. I know where I came from. I know who I am. That's why I'm not bothered by nonsense. That's why when I go like people, I tell people what I feel. And you don't like it, you know what you can kiss. But I ain't gonna bow down to nobody. I know my limits. Everybody got limits. I know how far I can push it. But where I come from, I didn't steal to come to where I am. I work hard. I beg sometimes. I didn't steal. So when our revolution came in 1980, all of our people that died were casualties of the revolution. My father was casualties. My family, they were all casualties of the revolution. All of us wanted a revolutionary Liberia. We wanted a change in Liberia. People follow Marcus Matthew, people follow Tipoter, people follow. We have so many splinter groups in Liberia. Everybody basically wanted change in our country. So when Dole came and overthrew with the military and decided to kill people, it hurt me. Yes, I was hurt. But then that was what we wanted. We wanted change. We wanted change our country. You can't dictate what kind of change you get. God dictates what kind of change we get. And that what happened because Marcus Marvin and thought there was going to be a change where the people would rise up and move top and put them into power. Then the military came, they thought the military was going to move top and put them into power. None of those things happened because that wasn't a change that God dictated for our country. You know? So we can dream of what we want. But when God intervenes, he does what he wants. And when he does it, we can't change it. We can't hate it. We got to accept it and move forward. Because when God said we're happy, we're happy. And nobody can change it. And we know that we are Christians. So when the coup happened, I went in my room and prayed and told God I will accept it. That was his will. If he didn't will it, my father and I were going to resist and were going to fight. But none of them resisted. All of them gave in. All of them that escaped came back and surrendered. My father, did they arrest my father? My father was about to escape. Then he came back and turned himself in. That's what I heard. Because I got a message. People came up to me with money and all and told me my father said, I should stay safe. They should take care of me. They should bring me money and food and things like that. And I never heard from my father again. But then when I looked, all of them were executed. It hurt. You think it didn't hurt? It hurt. But it didn't hurt me to the point where I wanted revenge against my people. The very people I have stood up to and taught all my life and tried to change and direct, I was turned against the very people that my grandfather supported and brought to our country and brought to Monrovia to have rights like all of us, that the same people I would turn against. I can't do that. Those are my people. I'm part of that group. My grandmother is Gola. I would turn against my people. I can talk the Siri all I want. I can look like Congo all I want. I know who I am. I'm part indigenous. Just like Moses in the Bible. Moses couldn't let the Egyptians mistreat the Jews. He was a Jewish prince. But he was an Egyptian prince. But he knew his roots. He knew he was a Jew. And he could not let the Egyptians mistreat the Jews. The same thing with me. My father in the leadership, I could have joined the Torbos and joined Ellen, all these people. I didn't do it because I know our country needs reform. It still needs reform. And our 1980 revolution has not achieved its objective. Why? Because Dole was not the revolutionary to change our country. No, that was people misunderstanding when I say our people revolution cannot fail. They say, "Oh, what kind of revolution? That nasty revolution that Gabe Tucker said. What kind of revolution those people revolution? That's not the people revolution. That's not Dole revolution. That's not Liberian people revolution. It's just that Dole was the catalyst that brought in the revolution. Dole was the tool that God used to bring in the revolution. That wasn't Dole revolution. That was the Liberian people's revolution. And that's why I went back to serve in the government. Also because I didn't have a job too. But I was loyal to the government. I didn't betray them. I told them what they needed to know and did my job. But that wasn't Dole revolution. That was the Liberian people revolution. All I wanted to change. I wanted to change. We didn't know what kind of change. We cannot dictate what kind of change we get. God dictates the change, and God brought the change through Simon Doe. So the change is there. We can either help to make our country better, or we can sit and sulk and just die like idiots, or continue the war fighting with each other, the dummies, instead of coming together and changing our country. So the revolution was not for Doe. Doe was just a catalyst to bring in the revolution. The revolution came. Doe failed. The revolution did not fail. We are still in the revolution. And that's my message to you people. Our revolution is not the PRC's revolution. That revolution of 1980 was the Liberian people's revolution. If the Liberian people did not support that revolution would have never been successful. The Liberian people embraced it. Yes, Doe was a catalyst. They embraced him as the chief and everything. And he was supposed to spearhead the changing of our country. It didn't matter whether he was uneducated or not. All that mattered was he had the sense to know that he needed help to change our country and guide it in the direction that it needed to be guided into. But when he got there, he got power hungry, he got power greedy. He thought he would lead our country like an educated man when he was not educated. So what did they do? End up killing each other, end up destroying themselves, end up plunging our country into a civil war. We've been through a civil war. Ellen Johnson came, she tried to revive our country. She went right back to the same Takma practice, the same Toba practice of nepotism. She started off good first. She started off with a mixed government for the first term, but then she found out that she couldn't have a way the way she wanted to have a way in Liberia. So what she did, she brought in her family members. Because Ellen Johnson still is a woman. No matter what kind of power she has, she couldn't control the Liberian men. And that frustrated her. That frustrated her in her new regime. Because even some of the people in her new regime did not agree with her. So after they left, she wanted to put people there who would do what she wanted to do. So she put her children in there. And it's not right. Thinking that, oh, they're educated, so it doesn't matter. No, it matters. They're your children. They will not do the biddings of the Liberian people. They will do your biddings. And that is why we do not put family members in public positions. Because public positions belong to the people. And when you put family in public position and they do things wrong and you don't want to punish them, you send the wrong message to our people and our nation. Eddie Johnson's children stole our money. They broke down our economy. And today, none of them have replenished our money. None of them have been punished for their crimes. Their mother, that old criminal, is a criminal too. She took responsibility for her son stealing and breaking down our oil company. She hasn't replenished our money. We need our money back. These people have no right to just take our money and things like that. And these were the same things that were happening on the Toba time. These were the same things that were happening before Toba on the Takma time. And these were the things the revolution came to change. It wasn't Doe revolution. All of us wanted change in Liberia. We were tired of one group of people just coming and taking our country to be theirs, doing what they want to do, doing how they want to do it with impunity. We were tired of that. That's why people welcome the revolution too. And those of us who want to change, we shut up. We shut up because our families were casualties of the revolution. It hurt us, yeah, but that was the revolution we prayed for. We all prayed for a revolution. We didn't know where we were going to land. So when they land in your lap, what are you going to do? Fight? No. No, you got to be sensitive. That's the revolution we prayed for. We prayed for a change, and when the change came, we got to direct that change. If the change is not right, it's our responsibility to direct that change. And that's why I serve in door government. I work with them. I wrote. I've been writing since 1980 telling people how our government should run. But we had no patriots. Everybody wanted money. Everybody wanted to be boss. Everybody was looking for government job. Everybody thought it was an opportunity to get wealthy. So everybody had no principles. We started losing principles for them. People started going to government to steal. All my young friends then had girlfriends, generally bosses, buying, you serving in government, stealing from the government from young ages. So our country just ran them up. And I could not join that. I came too far in my life, man. My life has been a struggle, an honest struggle. And I could not destroy it to be dishonest, to get rich fast. For what? I don't want that kind of wealth. I don't want that. I'm a Christian. Yeah, I got my ways, and I may not follow the Bible completely, but I got certain standards that I will not bend. I will not steal from my people. I will not depress my people. I will not lie to my people to get wealthy. I don't need that kind of trouble. I got my own hustle. My hustle going to pay one day. The enemy is not going to see my face. And you will welcome me. And you will welcome me. Yeah, you will welcome me. I'm on my way to my hustle. My success is not to rob my people, not to lie to them, not to deceive them. Our revolution has not died. It just been the other day. The revolution was brought in by Joe. Joe was weak. He couldn't lead the revolution. Joe was ignorant. That was his weakness. He was ignorant. He was dumb. He was weak. He couldn't lead the revolution. His job was just to bring in the revolution. That was God's demand that he be used to bring in the revolution. So he brought in the revolution. And instead of people using that opportunity to try to work with him to change our country for the better, all of them were wanting to behind him to move him to be president themselves. And when you got everybody want to be president, Barker want to be president, people that want to be president, Famula want to be, everybody want to be president, Ellen want to be president, everybody want to be president. He said, oh, the other guy want me to be president. They're not united. You know, everybody had their own group. Moja, Pal, Sal, all kind of groups were there popping up. How you trust these people? So those started flocking him because he knew all of them were deceitful. When everybody can't want to be president at the same time, you know, all of your fought Tauber, and first of all, they were not united in fighting Tauber because you still had the Moja, you still had the LPP. LPP was a PPP was a major group that instituted the protests and the lockdowns and all of that. That was Barker's major group. But you have all the other splinter groups. You have Moja, you have the other Moja was Tipote and was you know, man. You have Famole, you had Sawyer, you had Tipote on one side. Then you had the other group on the other side. All there were so many splinter groups. But it's just that PPP was a major group that led this thing. So they were looked upon as the major changing party. But these people didn't know what they wanted to do. So they could not satisfy the reason for the revolution. They couldn't lead the revolution. The revolution came and we had no leaders. That today we have no leaders of the revolution. Our revolution is lingering with our leaders. And let me tell you, young people, some people like Gabriel Tucker, It's not about our parents that got killed in 1918. It's not about the overthrow of the Togo government. It's about changing our society, putting our country on the right path where we follow the rule of law, where our country is governed by laws and not by you say, I say, or so say one, so say all, where our courts are the foundation to ensuring law, order, decency, and everything nice and constructive and under law in our country. If we don't have these things, we can never last. So I don't want to go on over an hour already. I could go on forever talking about this topic. But our revolution cannot fail. And we'll stop here. If I'm going to continue it, I will continue it during my next class. But for now, I'm over an hour. My class got to stop. The time of the people is now. Aluta, continua. I didn't even know I was talking this long. Have a good day.